My name's Claire Matthews, and until recently, I thought I had a perfectly normal life. I was married to Daniel, a smart, charming man who worked as a developer at a game company in London. He had a solid job, a decent income, and we lived in a cozy little flat in Croydon. Nothing too fancy, but it was ours. I cooked, I managed the house, and we never lacked anything important. We weren't rich, but we were comfortable. And to me, that was more than enough. But for Daniel, it never seemed to be. He always had this hunger in his eyes, not for me, not for love, but for money, power, success. He'd spend hours talking about the big break or his dream of launching a game that would make him a millionaire overnight. At first, I admired his ambition. Who doesn't want to dream big, right? But over time, it became an obsession. He'd come home from work ranting about how his boss didn't see his potential, how others were getting ahead while he stayed stuck. He wanted more. Always more. I'd try to calm him down, telling him we were doing all right, that life doesn't need to be extraordinary to be beautiful. I thought our simple little life was something to be proud of. But Daniel? He wasn't satisfied. He'd look at me with this half-smile, kiss my forehead, and say, "One day, Claire, you'll see. We're meant for more than this." I didn't argue much. I loved him, and I thought he loved me too. But love, I've learned, isn't always enough when someone's chasing shadows. And I never imagined how far Daniel would go to get what he wanted. It was a Friday, I remember clearly, because I had just finished tidying up the kitchen after dinner when Daniel walked through the door, all smiles and excitement, a rare sight those days. "Claire," he said, dropping his bag by the door. "Get dressed, love. We're going to my boss's place tonight for dinner." I blinked, a bit caught off guard. "Tonight? You didn't mention anything before." "Yeah, it came up last minute. It's important," he said quickly, already heading to the bedroom. "Wear that red dress, the short one. You know the one I like." I paused. The red dress? I hadn't worn it in ages, not since our honeymoon in Devon. It felt a bit too daring for a dinner with his boss, but Daniel looked genuinely happy for once, like something big was finally happening for him. I didn't want to dampen his mood. "All right," I said softly, giving him a small smile. "I'll get ready." He came over and kissed my forehead. "Thanks, babe. You'll look stunning." There was something in his voice, a nervous edge maybe, but I brushed it off. I told myself I was overthinking again, like I sometimes did. Maybe this dinner really was about work, maybe his boss finally saw the potential Daniel had always gone on about. I looked in the mirror before we left, tugging at the hem of the dress, wondering if it was too much. But I reminded myself, it's just dinner. For Daniel. To make him happy. I had no idea what was waiting for me that night. The taxi ride to Daniel's boss's house was quiet, but not uncomfortable. Daniel kept checking his watch, tapping his foot, like something important was riding on the evening. I didn't ask too many questions, I assumed it was work-related stress. I just sat beside him, my coat pulled tight around the red dress, hoping I didn't look out of place. We arrived at a sleek, modern home just outside the city, the kind of place with spotless glass walls and fancy lights in the garden. Daniel rang the bell, and a tall man with graying hair and sharp eyes opened the door. "Claire, this is Mr. Whitmore," Daniel said. "My boss." "Please, call me Edward," he said with a polite smile, his eyes settling on me, not in a welcoming way, but in a way that made my stomach twist just a little. He was respectful, said all the right things, offered us wine, complimented the food he'd had catered in, laughed at Daniel's jokes, but every time I looked up, I caught him glancing at me. Not quickly, not casually, like he was studying me. At first, I told myself I was imagining things. Maybe he was just surprised Daniel brought someone along. Maybe I was being silly, uncomfortable in a dress I hadn't worn in over a year. But as the night went on, it became harder to ignore. The conversation was mostly about Daniel's game idea, how revolutionary it was, how much potential it had. Edward listened, nodding, sipping his wine, occasionally letting his gaze flick back to me. I smiled, played along, and tried to stay present. But something about the whole evening felt off. Like I was part of a plan no one had told me about. And I was right. I just didn't know it yet. After dinner, we moved to the sitting room, one of those posh lounges with leather furniture and walls lined with books no one ever reads. Edward poured more wine while Daniel kept talking about his game idea, more animated now, like he was rehearsing a pitch he'd practiced 100 times. I was quietly sipping my drink, my legs tucked politely to the side, when Daniel leaned over and whispered, "Hey, love. I'm going to head home now." I turned to him, confused. "What? Why?" He glanced toward Edward and lowered his voice even more. "You're staying here tonight." I blinked, thinking I'd misheard. "What are you talking about?" He gave me a look, serious, urgent. "Claire, this is it. Edward's willing to invest in my game. He said it himself, he'll put in the full $1 million. I stared at him. "So? What's that got to do with me staying here?" Daniel avoided my eyes. "He wants a night with you." The words hit me like cold water. I froze. "What?" I whispered, my voice shaking. "It's just one night," he said, eyes darting nervously. "Think of what it could mean for us. For the future." I stood up, heart pounding, my hands trembling. "You can't be serious." And then, he slapped me. Not hard. Not enough to knock me over. But enough to shatter something inside me. Daniel had never raised a hand to me, not once in our whole marriage. But in that moment, chasing his $1 million dream, he did. Tears welled up in my eyes. I couldn't even speak. He didn't apologize. Didn't look back. He just walked out the door, leaving me alone in a stranger's house, with the man he'd handed me over to. I felt like the ground had been pulled out from under me. I stood there, frozen in the middle of the room, tears slipping down my cheeks, the sting of Daniel's slap still fresh on my skin, but the pain was deeper than just physical. My legs felt weak, like they might give out beneath me. And then I realized, Edward was still there, watching. But not with the same look he'd had earlier. His expression had changed, softer, almost apologetic. "Claire," he said gently, taking a step toward me but stopping at a respectful distance. "Please, sit down. You're safe here." I didn't move at first. I couldn't. My body was too shocked. My mind was racing, trying to make sense of what had just happened. But Edward didn't come closer. He didn't reach for me or speak like a man expecting something in return. His tone was calm. Steady. "I'm not going to touch you," he said plainly. "I never intended to." That made me look at him. My eyes met his, and I could see something I hadn't expected. Sincerity. He sighed, running a hand through his hair. "I needed you to see who Daniel really is. I had a suspicion, but tonight confirmed it. The moment he offered you like a bargaining chip, I knew everything I needed to know about the kind of man he is." I sat down slowly, the sofa catching me before I crumpled to the floor. The tears kept coming, but now it was more from relief. The terrifying pressure I had felt just moments ago was suddenly gone. Edward poured a glass of water and handed it to me, keeping his distance. "You don't owe me anything, Claire. You never did." And in that moment, I felt something I hadn't felt in a long time. Respected. Edward showed me to the guest room that night, a warm, quiet space with soft lighting and clean sheets. He didn't linger, didn't say anything more than a polite "good night, Claire," before gently closing the door behind him. I sat on the edge of the bed for a long while, staring at nothing, my thoughts heavy and tangled. Everything felt like a blur: Daniel's coldness, his betrayal, the sting of his hand across my face, and then Edward's words. His kindness. His respect. How had I missed it for so long? How had I convinced myself that Daniel's ambition was admirable, when really it had turned into something so ugly, so cruel? I lay down eventually, but sleep didn't come easily. My heart ached, but not just from what Daniel had done. It ached from the realization that love, real love, had been missing from my life for a long time. That maybe I had mistaken loyalty for love. Survival for happiness. By morning, I was still exhausted, but somehow calmer, steadier. When I came downstairs, Edward was already in the kitchen, making tea. He greeted me with a warm smile, like nothing about the night before needed to be dragged back into the light. But then he looked at me seriously and said, "Claire, I know this is sudden, and I know you've been hurt, but I can't keep quiet." I held my breath. "I want to be with someone like you. Someone kind. Real. If you'll have me, I'd be honored to marry you." My eyes filled with tears again, but this time for a different reason. A good one. Because in that moment, I realized something surprising. I was starting to love him too. The morning air felt different, lighter somehow, like a storm had passed. I sat in Edward's kitchen, sipping tea in silence, still trying to believe the calm around me was real. I didn't know what the future held, but for the first time in a long while,
I felt like I had a choice.
Then, the front door burst open. Daniel stormed in without knocking, his face flushed, eyes wild.
Claire.
"Let's go," he barked, like nothing had happened. Like he hadn't offered me up like some prize in a trade.
I stood slowly, heart steady.
"I'm not going with you." He blinked, confused.
What are you talking about? Don't be dramatic.
"We've got things to talk about at home." "I'm not coming back with you, Daniel," I said firmly. "I want a divorce."
His face twisted in shock. Are you mad? All this over one night?
"Do you have any idea what I've sacrificed for us?"
No,
I said, my voice rising. "You didn't sacrifice for us.
You sacrificed me.
For your greedy, twisted idea of success." He stepped closer, his tone turning darker.
Claire, don't be stupid. You're my wife.
"You belong with me." I didn't flinch.
Not this time. I don't belong to anyone.
Especially not someone who sees me as currency. Before he could say another word, Edward stepped in, calm but cold. "That's enough, Daniel. You're finished, not just with Claire, but with this company.
You're fired. And don't expect a single penny."
You got exactly what you deserved." Daniel stood there, stunned, mouth opening and closing with no words coming out. And just like that, he was done, stripped of his plan, his power, and the woman he thought he could control.
He left empty-handed. And I finally felt free.
After Daniel left, silence settled over the house, but this time, it wasn't uncomfortable.
It was peaceful.
I stood in the doorway for a moment, watching the street where he'd disappeared, and for the first time in a long while,
I didn't feel fear. I felt hope. The days that followed were gentle.
Edward never pushed, never rushed me. He gave me space, kindness, and something I hadn't known I was missing, genuine care.
It wasn't long before I accepted his proposal.
Not because I was running from my past, but because I was ready to walk into a future where I was respected, valued, and loved. Our wedding was simple, just close friends, a soft breeze, and warm smiles. But the way Edward looked at me that day, like I was the only woman in the world, that meant everything. He treated me like a queen, not with grand gestures, but with quiet consistency.
Morning tea in bed. Listening without interrupting.
Holding my hand when I was lost in thought. We built a life on respect, laughter, and real love.
Who said you can only fall in love once in your life?
Sometimes, love finds you when you least expect it, through pain, through truth, and through the courage to choose self-respect. Real love isn't just about romance, it's about being seen, valued, and truly cherished. So, if you've ever been broken or betrayed, don't lose hope. Love has a way of coming back, stronger, purer, and exactly when your heart is ready to receive it.